Delta variant has a strong replacement factor, meaning it tends to replace the other variants because it is more infectious, 50% more infectious compared to the previous variants.
37 areas, including 8 cities in Metro Manila, are under heightened alert due to the high number of COVID-19 infections, and that's only the first day of the lockdown. How can the lockdown contain further transmission? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to this special edition of The Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay, kasama natin online, Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star and Ed Lingao of One News. Chiefs, good evening.
Good evening.
Happy weekend.
Not a
Ami,
happy weekend, unfortunately.
Ami Bok, an ominous start, shall we say,
Yes.
to ECQ. 10,000 new cases today.
Oo nga. And lahat na daw ngayon, all over Metro Manila na, all cities and the one town, lahat meron ng Delta variant infections.
And ang rate ng positive cases versus yung testing, pumalo na ng 18.4%. That's high.
And these are the kinds of things that we're worried about and we want to discuss today. Pasok na natin, no, para kumustahin natin yung first day. Let's start tonight with PNP spokesperson, Police Brigadier General Ronaldo Olay. Good evening, General Olay.
Good evening, General.
Magandang gabi, sir.
Good evening, Ami, Robbie, and Ed. Magandang gabi sa inyong mga taga-subaybay.
Magandang gabi po. General, kamusta po? First day ng ECQ.
Well, Robbie, first day of ECQ ay kaagad umikot ang ating Chief PNP, si Police General Guillermo Eliazar, no? Inikutan niya yung 7 locations sa NCR quarantine control points natin. At nakita niya, he was satisfied with the preparations, with the ongoing law enforcement and public safety operations. No? At nakita niya, gusto niyang i-supervise mismo yung mga quarantine control points natin. No? At chine-check niya yung kahandaan ng mga kapulisan natin. Tinatanong niya, parang binibigyan niya ng quiz, mga situational na halimbawa pag ganito. So binibigyan niya ng mga tanong at tapos sinasagot siya kung ano man dapat na gagawin in any particular case. At nakita naman natin, no, na yung mga kapulisan natin sa ating QCPs, quarantine control points, ay alam naman nila yung mga dokumento na hinahanap nila. No? At in fact, may mga pinapabalik, mga non-appers na dapat wala sila at hindi na sila pinatuloy. So yun ang mga situation ngayon at 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock kanina ay nag-meeting ang inyong joint task force COVID Shield sa pangunguna ng ating Deputy Chief PNP for Operations, si Police Lieutenant General Bong Dixon, para i-review namin. No? Ako, kasama rin ako doon, although nag-join ako virtual. Para i-review namin yung mga challenges during the first, actually hindi nga isang araw pa eh. Kasi nag-start tayo, 12 o'clock eh.
Yes, sir.
So, tinignan natin yung mga challenges at para bukas, makapag-adjust tayo kung ano yung dapat na gagawin based on the issues and the challenges that we face.
Sir, ano sir yung major challenge na nakita niyo for the first day?
Well, eto siyempre, ano ba yung sorry, major challenge dyan ay traffic build-up. No? Pangalawa, yung mga concern na rin ito, although wala sa QCP ito, mga super spreader events, no? And then yung influx ng kababayan natin sa vaccination sites, yun ang mga challenges natin diyan, no? At seemingly increased number of our appers, no? Doon sa increased number of appers, kasi may mga economic activity tayo na
Na pinayagan eh.
inalaw. Oh, yes. Oo. So para yung economy natin mag-roll, no? It will move, no? So yun ang mga nakikita natin na challenges, and hopefully bukas yung mga napag-usapan kanina, no? Halimbawa doon sa traffic build-up in some QCPs during the first day of ECQ implementation, no? We will engage support ng government agencies such as yung Bureau of Fire, AFP, and local government units, no? Kasi alam namin na hindi naman kayang gawin ito lang ng PNP. Dapat pagtulong-tulungan natin ito. Nabanggit nga ninyo kanina na 10,000 pala ngayon yung infection na this day only. So dapat tulong-tulong tayo. And then nakita pa natin sa mga traffic build-up, siyempre sineparate namin yung lanes for two-wheel vehicles, motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
And then for four-wheel vehicles, cars, vans, hiwa-hiwalay, no? Para hindi talaga mag-build up yung traffic. Tapos yung mga trucks, yung mga may laman na kargamento, basic necessities, bigas, food, hindi naman sinecheck po yan tuloy-tuloy para tuloy-tuloy yung pag-move ng economy natin, no? So yun yung mga adjustment na ginagawa natin. Actually, yung checkpoint dedicated control points for motorcycles ay hinihiwalay din yan sa sa control points ng mga kotse, no, mga four-wheel vehicles, para hindi mag-clog up. Ibig sabihin, iba yung area, although nasa vicinity lang, pero iba yung na nag-check sa motorcycles, iba yung nag-check sa mga kotse, sa four-wheel vehicles, at may distansya, no? Para kasi kung iisang lugar lang yung pinag-checkan mo, ang tendency talagang mag-clog up sa iisang lugar, no?
General,
Opo.
nakita namin pati yung mga laman ng mga jeep at bus, chine-check ninyo eh. Meron ba kayong mga inaresto or apprehended or pinababa or dinala lang para masermonan o masabihan ng mga guidelines? Meron ba kayong mga
Well, hindi naman inaresto talaga, no? Kundi pagsabihan, no? Siyempre, based na rin yung sa guidance ng ating Chief PNP, Police General Villan Orlasar, no? Na sabi niya ay respetuhin yung human rights ng mga mananakay natin, motorista, no? Be courteous at walang parusahan, walang pahihiyain. Bagkus first day pa lang naman ito, no? At kailangan i-remind lang siguro sila, no? Nakikita natin yung iba dyan ay pinapababa pag puno yung or meaning kasi dapat ang ating PUVs 50%
50%.
capacity, at pag nakita nila na sobra sa 50 ay kailangan bumaba yung mga sobra, at siyempre pinangangaralan din yung driver.
So walang dinala sa presinto, General? Walang ngayong araw, wala? Sa
Opo, sa tingin ko po, wala po sa mga paunang report ng mga units natin. They're still coming in. Actually, hindi pa nga na-consolidate yung mga reports ng ating mga lower units, no? Pero sa akin ay parang wala naman kailangang dalhin pa, no? Nakikita kasi natin na pag dinala mo yan sa station, no? You can pwedeng i-book na siya mismo doon sa sa control point, no? Pag dinala mo kasi sa station yan, ay problema pa ng pulis kung, di ba, maskip maliit lang naman ang mga PCPs natin, no? Minsan nga yung PCPs natin is van lang siya. So baka counterproductive pa na dadalhin mo sa station at magkalat pa ng virus, hindi natin alam kung expected siya, no? So pangangaralan na lang, and kung in case na talagang kailangan dalhin siya, ay dapat yung ground commander natin na i-coordinate na sa mga barangays natin, no? Kasi kung ano yung umiiral na ordinansa sa isang jurisdiction, halimbawa sa isang city or sa isang municipality, ay yun namang ordinansa na yun ang ipapatupad nila during that time. So halimbawa, usually naman kasi yung ordinances first time na na infraction is it's either warning, yun ang ginagawa ngayon. So pangalawa, fine, pwedeng pagmultahin. At pangatlo po ay pwedeng community service. Ngayon, kung meron ng resisting or disobedience, ganyan, ay ibang usapan na po yun kasi that's already a violation of the revised penal code, no? So ibang treatment natin doon. Pero siyempre ang utos sa kanila ay calibrated ang response, no? Pag initially nag-resist, kausapin mo rin, calibrated ang response, no? Hindi yung initially nag-resist, pupusasan mo kaagad or akala mo kung ano yung nangyari na. So dapat calibrated po.
General, pasado alas 8 na. Marami rin nagtatanong, marami pa rin nalilito sa curfew. What do we need to understand about curfew during ECQ?
During the ECQ, ang curfew hours natin is 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. the next day, no? Yung curfew ay dapat mayroon lang authorized na nasa labas ng kanilang mga tahanan, no? Inaalaw naman natin yung mga authorized persons outside residence na nasa labas during the curfew hours. Halimbawa, yung mga workers natin coming home, we allow them. No? Then, syempre, yung mga appers na consumer, dapat wala na sila. Yung consumer appers, yung mga bibili ng pagkain or gamot, dapat they should go do their marketing time during non-curfew hours. Umaga, before 8, dapat tapos na, kabalik na ng bahay. So yun ang mga rules na dapat maintindihan ng mga kababayan natin.
Nabanggit nyo, General, yung gulo kahapon sa mga vaccination sites. Ang sabi ng PNP Command, nag-form na daw kayo ng quick response teams. Pwede nyo ba, can you explain kung ano yan, mga gaano kalaki yan, para daw mapigilan na hindi na maulit siya mga ganyan?
Well, na-discuss kanina yan sa ating meeting sa Joint Task Force COVID Shield. No? Nabanggit ko na rin kanina na isang challenge yun yung influx of people sa vaccination sites natin. No? At isang ang kautusan ng ating Chief PNP Police General Guillermo Villasar, yung pag-organize ng ating quarantine reaction teams. Dapat hindi nga teams ito, platoon. Kasi dapat organize yan at ready to be deployed anytime. Ibig sabihin, pag may may kautusan din sa ating mga local ground commanders na i-engage nila palagi yung mga local government units, no? Alamin nila kung ano yung existing na policy sa pagbabakuna. Halimbawa, yung isang LGU ay hindi niya ni-require na mag-pre-register. So, baka may tendency doon na dubugin nga yung dubugin yung kasi wala palang registration. Pero kung ang isang locality, isang jurisdiction ay ni-require ng may pre-registration, so alam nila na controlled yung dapat tao doon, no? So pag alam nilang walang pre-registration, ready sila na mag-deploy kaagad ng tao doon sa isang vaccination site, no? Based na doon sa engagement nila sa ating local government units, no? At dapat close coordination always with the LGU and organize your own quick reaction platoon actually. Yun ang pautusan po ng ating Chief PNP sa ating mga ground commanders.
So deployed na sila ngayon, simula ngayong araw?
Well, hindi naman naka-deploy kasi naka-ready lang po yan sa headquarters. Pag sinabing may build up, ganyan, maraming tao, deploy ka agad.
Speaking po of the chaos yesterday sa Las Piñas and Manila, and ayun nga, binabaling yan sa misinformation, disinformation. Kanina, MMDA was saying, nag-umpisa na yung mga anti-cybercrime units. We know NBI is looking into that as well, trying to trace saan ba nag-umpisa tong mga misinformation na to na nakita natin talagang delikado if it gets out of hand. I'm just wondering, sir, whether with the police and your coordination also with the NBI, if you have any updates on that matter.
Well, nagbigay ng kautusan ng ating Chief PNP, no, Police General Guillermo Villasar, na yung anti-cybercrime group namin, no, they have the capability to tracing, no, yung source ng mga disinformation campaign, no. At makita natin in a few days kung ano yung mga gagawin ng ating cybercrime group, no. Kasi pwede nilang yung ang tawag yung parang cyber patrol. Cyber patrol. I-scan nila yung cybercrime yung cyberspace natin, no. Nang-i-scan sila, no, nag-i-scan sila. Tinitignan nila kasama yung sa kanilang mandate na ni-scan nila yung cyberspace, tignan nila kung ano yung mga seemingly misinformation, tunay. So ganon ang ginagawa ng anti-cybercrime group. Meron silang cyber patrollers na tinatawag.
But General, without prejudicing your findings, no, we know it takes some time. But are there indications initially na sinadya ang misinformation, that there were people who were deliberately trying to send these false information that caused people to panic?
Well, Robbie, I cannot tell at this point in time, no. Too early to tell, no. Makita natin yung pattern later, no. Pero as of this time,
nakausap niyo po ba si Mayor Isko Moreno? Kasi yun ang sinasabi niya na mukhang napolitika daw siya. Kasi parang may mga series of events daw na mukhang may nagsasabotahe din sa kanyang administrasyon and related to that vaccination crowd din daw sa Manila.
Well, Ami, wala akong personal information pa kung nakapag-coordinate na yung ating anti-cybercrime group sa kanya, no? Pero isa yun sa siyempre gagawin, coordinate with the LGUs, no? Na naapektuhan yung sinasabing disinformation.
Pero sir, I think your fundamental problem with that din kasi is what law will you use to punish fake news? Kasi yung Bayanihan 1, which had the provision against spreading false news, already expired. Kasi 3 months lang Bayanihan 1 eh. So kung sakali may mahuli man lang kayo, isasampa natin?
Well, merong cybercrime, anti-cybercrime law eh. Republic Act 10175, I'm not sure. Pero meron tayong anti-cybercrime act. Cybercrime act. Yung when you use the internet, computer to disseminate false information, so kasama yon sa anti-cybercrime act.
Okay.
Anyway,
although
sir,
there's also the revised penal code, I think there's a provision on false news. Article 154.
Yes, oo. In relation to parang ganon ang mga investigation natin diyan. When you provide false information using internet or the computer, so parang madadagdagan yung yung offense niya, yung liability niya.
Pero sa tingin niyo, sa nalalaman niyo dito sa kaso po, sa tingin niyo may kakayahan yung PNP and NBI na mahuli yung nagpakalat? Kasi sinasabi ng gobyerno mukhang sabotage siya.
Well, Ami, it really depends on the information that will be gathered, no? Depende sa ebidensya. We work on evidence, sabi na natin.
okay. Anyway, General, it's only the first day of ECQ, the first evening of ECQ of this curfew. We know you're very busy. Maraming salamat po sa oras ninyo.
Thank you, General.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you sa inyo. On behalf of the Chief PNP, Police General Guillermo Villasar, maraming salamat sa pagkakataon na ito.
Maraming salamat po. That was PNP Brigadier General Ronaldo Olay. Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back. Welcome back, the Chiefs here on One News. I'm Robbie Alampay, still with Ami Pamintuan and Ed Lingao. And now joining us is Dr. Ted Herbosa, Special Advisor to the National Task Force Against COVID-19. Good evening, Dr. Herbosa.
Good evening,
Good evening,
Dr.
Robbie.
Good evening po.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody.
Tay-
Good evening, mga chief.
we were saying kanina on ominous start to ECQ. We've hit 10,000 again. First time going back to 10,000 new cases since I think April, in the middle of that surge. Of course, even in April, we know it didn't stop there. What does this first day and the numbers today, do they portend anything for the coming 2 weeks?
Well, the models have been correct that the cases would increase, and even before it's our first day of ECQ, that means this 10,600 plus new cases were infected a week ago. They were infected five to 7 days ago, and their test just came out today. So we expect that there will be more contact tracing. That means for each case that was positive today, they'll be testing more people, and probably another group will also be testing again positive there. So I think it will increase some more in the next few days
Yeah, but I mean,
before we have a relief or a plateau.
yeah, but Doc, can you brace us for what kinds of numbers are coming?
I think with the transmissibility of the Delta variant, the Delta variant now comprises like 30% of the Philippine Genome Center's samples. No, they sample something like 300 plus a day, and 100 plus actually turned out to be Delta variant. Of course, the top notcher per se is the South African variant, or the Beta, and the Alpha. But the Delta is catching up soon, and with the known transmissibility, almost fourfold transmissibility, I think will be in for a lot of cases. So I was talking to the Dr. Bernadette Velasco of the Hospital Command, and she said it's been a busy day. She's been trying to probably arrange this 10,000, or let's say half of that might be NCR. So half of that, about 5,000 or less, might be coming from the National Capital Region. And of course, we're arranging for the isolation of this particular positive patients.
Sir, nung summer, nag-peak ata tayo ng summer na mga 13,000 eh.
13, correct.
Are we seeing something like that, or something probably higher because of Delta variant?
Higher because it's 4 times more transmissible. In fact, if you notice, on a daily basis, we started with 5,000, then 6,000, then
8,000
7,000.
yeah.
Yesterday was
And then now.
8,000, and then today it's 10,000. So you follow that trend. That's the trend. That's the upward trend. So I think my prediction is we will overcome the 12,000 that we had last April.
Doctor,
Even with the ECQ?
yeah.
Even with the ECQ. The ECQ's effect will be a week later when it plateaus to a peak. If it peaks wherever, and then it will start to plateau, we will feel that about a week or two after we decrease mobility of our people.
Kaya lang, Doc, on the eve of ECQ, we had those events yesterday, di ba?
Correct.
Involving a lot of people. And siguro, matetestan mga after a week, di ba?
Correct.
And then, magka-contact trace yung mga yon. If ganyan ka-transmissible yon, and it's Delta, even if it's Alpha or Beta. And after
Yes.
the 2 weeks, di kalat na kalat yan, di ba? Yan, anong projecta niya?
That's right. So we have very transmissible. So we have, number one, we already have the variants of concern, which is the Alpha and the Beta, Beta being the higher. And then now Delta is racing up to be a close third. Baka mag-gold medal din siya. So I think what will happen is that they will overtake the numbers. They will overtake the numbers of the other variants, and it will become predominantly 80 to 90% will be the Delta variant, which is what we saw in Vietnam, Malaysia, Myanmar, and Thailand.
Yeah.
So that's what happened in the other countries. I do hope that our health system will be able to prepare, because now it's the ECQ was really for them, so that they could actually prepare for the surge of cases, making sure that oxygen supply is there, PPEs are there, and making sure that there will be alternate personnel if they do get infected. Because even if you're vaccinated, what happens in the hospital is when you get a positive test, you're also quarantined, even if you're mild. So you can't work.
Yeah.
So that depletes the personnel in the hospital.
Yeah.
So that's the stress it will give to us in the health system. You saw this in India and Indonesia. So I do hope this ECQ will help us brace and
Yeah, but
brace the impact of the Delta variant.
yeah, but speaking of which, Doc, I'd hate to ask this on the first day of the ECQ, but as you're talking us through, how the numbers will come within a week, and then after that we start to see people just being tested for an event that happened only yesterday. It means that by the end of this ECQ, we're only getting a clear picture of what happened yesterday.
That's right.
I just want to be clear. So should people be bracing themselves even as early as now for the possibility and the options that this will not just be a 2-week lockdown?
Okay, so let me explain what the strategy is of the National Task Force. The main strategy of the National Task Force is, of course, decrease mobility of people. But the more important one is to really continue and ramp up vaccinations. So right now, today, we actually outdid the US on a daily output. We did about 700 plus vaccine injections yesterday. And we've hit our 10 million fully vaccinated. We're about 23 million already given doses to the Filipinos. So about 10 million are fully protected. About 11 million are 12 million are partially given their first dose, awaiting their second dose. And in Metro Manila, the strategy in NCR is we try to catch 50% of the population already vaccinated. I think we're nearing it. I think we're somewhere near 30 to 40% of the population of Metro Manila. So that's why the vaccinations need to be continued even during the ECQ. And we're trying to prioritize the A2 and A3. That's the senior citizens and the persons with morbidity. So why are we doing this? So that we will have less people in the ICU and less people dying. Because if we get the A2 and the A3 vaccinated, the senior citizens and persons with morbidities, our chances of having low deaths, and this is what they saw in Israel and in the US. They have a very high number of cases, but as the vaccinations are more, the ICU admissions are less. So that's actually the silver lining behind the cloud. So let's continue. And we have the supplies. So I think a million doses again arrived. And then for August, I think there's like 12 million doses that's actually arriving. So we will have the supply. We will concentrate most of these supplies, maybe half of these supplies to NCR so we can vaccinate the high-risk populations.
Yes, sir. But sir, supplies are coming in, but of course, iba pa rin yung yung nandiyan na lahat at you're free to dispense them all as you please. So it's still kahit paano a supply issue. I'm wondering about the other factor that we have control of, or we should have having control of, which is contact tracing.
Yes.
Kasi yun talaga, meron tayong, well, if you wanted to, we would have the capability if you wanted to pursue it all the way. Unlike yung vaccination na medyo hostage ka ng ibang bansa. But as far as contact tracing is concerned, I think a lot of people are concerned as to whether or not we'll be able to find the funding soon enough for contact tracers. That's number one. And number two, to expand contact tracing further. Kasi right now, what they're looking for pa lang is funding to sustain the existing contact tracing capability, which is still
Correct.
below par. We're not even talking about upgrading. We're talking about sustaining lang. So that might be a pretty big issue.
So my personal opinion on that one is that at a certain point, once the Delta variant rages and you have more community transmission, and there's really community transmission, what will happen is we will go for containment. So you end up with stricter lockdowns in areas that have high clusters. So you don't have to catch all the contacts of a particular case or cluster of cases, because it will become physically impossible with the resources and the logistics that we have when we don't have digital contact tracing that supports our and lack of personnel. I think it's more the lack of people. So at a certain point, when the cases rage, you will have to do containment and making sure that it doesn't spread
Yeah.
higher. In public health, we have something like ring immunization when you try to get an area that there's a cluster and then you go around and immunize as much as possible the people around going inward so that you can protect the spread, prevent the spread of
Yes,
the
sir.
transmission.
Do
Sir,
the
So
contain...
those
yung
are the
containment.
methods we will be going through too.
Yes, sir. Parang nakakatakot pakinggan yung containment kasi I hear that in zombie movies eh. Talagang wala ka na magawa kundi build the wall around them.
Yeah, but
Correct. But basically, it's a containment. That's basically isolation and quarantine. No, when you quarantine people coming from abroad, it's a form of making sure that they don't bring the variants to the Philippines, the variants of concern into the Philippines. And if you have areas with lots of cases, it's really like the zombie movie. When all the people in that area are zombies,
yeah, but
you
ayun yung
try to
tatanong
lock
ko,
down
ayun
that
yung
particular
tatanong ko, Doc,
area, so they don't expand. So it doesn't expand.
but Doc, given that it's given the concern for Delta and you know much higher transmissibility, do the protocols for containing do they have to be adjusted? Is there any difference in protocols for granular lockdowns, for example? Do the old advice and guidance apply still completely in the case of Delta cases?
Yes, they all apply. PDITR, prevent, detect, isolate, and then treat. So it's the same principles: test, trace, and treat. It's the same principle, but you have to be more aggressive. You because the previous variants of concern was reproducing at 1:2, and now it's 1:8. So that's like four times much more
So in the
transmissible.
case, for example, of a
So
granular
that's the scary
lockdown,
part. That's
so
really the scary
in the
part.
case, for example, of a granular lockdown, when you say it's the same things, you do the same moves, except that you have to be a bit more aggressive. In the case of a granular lockdown, what does being more aggressive mean? So for example, before a granular lockdown, depending on the situation, isang kalye lang. Does that mean, for example, that in certain parameters, you widen those things?
I think the way to answer your question, Robbie, is if you look at Australia and New Zealand, you hear what they do. They have 4 cases identified in Sydney. They lock down for like a week or two. And then in Auckland, in New Zealand, it's something like that as well. They have this local transmission with a taxi driver, and they will lock down as well. So I think that's the concept that we need. We were at a low of like 4,000, 5,000 cases a day, not 4 or 5 cases, unlike them, and they already do the lockdown. So I think that's the what we mean by being more aggressive. So if you have a clustering of cases of 2, 3, or 4 cases in a particular barangay, I think that is the one that needs case investigation. So we call it case investigation. That means you'll try to find the index case who infected the 3 or 4 in that barangay, and then make sure you quarantine the rest of those that are exposed. We call them the exposed, the people that were close contacts. And now exposed are easily infected because we know in the Delta there is fleeting contact. Unlike before, it would take 15 minutes for the Alpha or the Beta to infect you. Now it takes 15 seconds to actually infect someone. So a few seconds of contact can infect a person exposed to another positive.
Doctor, linawin ko lang, you're raising the possibility, we're under lockdown now. You're raising the possibility that we could have granular lockdowns within the ECQ. Ganun ba yan?
Yeah, we call extreme enhanced. We did this before. Remember in Quezon City, there were, when we were in
Special concern
ECQ,
lockdown.
the special concern lockdown, EE, extreme enhanced community quarantine, and then you saw like blockades or people cannot pass there. There's no entry there. So that's the type of thing I think will contain, will help contain. So our local surveillance and epidemiology units must actually be able to be what you call fast in terms of responding to outbreaks or clustering of multiple cases in a particular geographic location.
This would be in lieu of longer ECQ because the businessmen are hoping this will be our last ECQ without an extension beyond 2 weeks.
That's the hope of the vaccination. So that's the hope of the vaccinating 50% of NCR. Because if we're able to vaccinate the high-risk population and 50%, we will be able to open up. So we can open up with little risk. Because that means we've protected our senior citizens, our persons with morbidities, and we will have less people being admitted in the ICU. And hopefully our fatality rate will also go down. But we will still have infection. So that's the difference. So you'll still have to ask everybody to wear a mask, wear a face shield, and avoid crowded places.
Sir, I remember we were all alarmed dun sa gubat sa syudad
Yes.
incident earlier this year, or was it last year? But anyway,
This year.
Yeah,
naalaman
this
tayo.
year. This year.
And,
That was
and it
this
came
year.
to a point that the LGU had everybody there tested.
Correct.
For well, I think it was RT-PCR testing. But what we saw the other day was even worse, a lot worse in several multiples compared to Gubat sa Ciudad. What should we do about that? Is there anything that we have to put in place, or any process we have to put in place to head off the spread of infections from that event? Kumbaga,
Okay,
I
so
don't know.
I'm
I don't
as
know if it's possible
baffled
to
as you
test them
are.
all.
Yeah, I'm as baffled as you are to those events because even before the ECQ, the National Vaccine Operations Center has been issuing advisories to all LGUs.
Yeah.
We said
So, okay.
vaccinations will continue during the period of the ECQ, but people have to be pre-registered. Minimum public health standards have to be followed. That was actually being issued, and in our daily huddles, with the local chief executives, the mayors attend, and the city health officers attend. This has been reiterated. So I feel I see a little malice in what happened. I heard in the news that there were some people that were hakot, to brought to a particular location. So, but I still don't know. Let the NBI investigate that.
Yes, sir.
But the
Yes, sir.
event happened.
But, sir,
The
in
event
responding
happened,
to
and we
this,
saw it was
yes, sir.
mayhem.
But what's the proper response to this? I mean, medically, in a public health sense, what should we do in light of what happened? Should we track them down if that's even possible, like what we did with Gubat sa Ciudad, or just leave it be and wait for 1 week?
The announcement of the Department of Health, Seth Berher announced that anyone who was in these mass gathering events of the vaccination centers that were crowded and looked like they were, palit mukha ang location nila, they're really close to each other. I think they should self-monitor. They should quarantine. That means they shouldn't expose themselves to other people. And the moment they have symptoms, they should contact their barangay health emergency response team so that they can get the PCR test that's needed and then be isolated. So I think it's now their responsibility to actually make sure that they do not spread the virus to other people if they contracted it in that event.
Will you dissuade them from getting up? Because they were scrambling for a vaccine. I'm sure they are still trying to get vaccinated. Will you advise them, wag muna kayo magpa-vaccinate because you might be infected?
That's also correct. Because if you were exposed, one of the contraindications is really a person who has been exposed to a positive case, and we wait about 10 days. If you're asymptomatic, we wait 10 days before we will give you your shot. 14 days if you develop symptoms. So it's a 2-week wait. So actually, they put themselves in a higher risk when they did that and exposed themselves to each other. So that's true. And if you get the vaccine, because it's also going to trigger your immune system, you might end up also in the hospital because of the additive combinations of the stress for your immune system. So that's a very good observation. That's actually true.
Yeah, that will be, I think they should be warned na they could actually be hospitalized if you are infected and you get your shot. Di ba?
That that's right. That's right. That they can actually be infected. So these people that were exposed need to actually disclose and declare that they were in that mass gathering event several days prior, even if they're already in the queue for
Ah.
a vaccine shot.
Oh, so Doc, linawin lang natin yun. No? Kasi the only way you can do that is madadaan nyo lang yan sa pakiusap tsaka sa panawagan. Di ba?
Correct.
Na, basically, what you're saying is kung nandun kayo sa Las Piñas at nandun kayo sa Manila sa kaguluhan kahapon, wag po muna kayo magpabakuna. Mag-isolate muna
Tama.
kayo.
Oo.
Tama? Mag-isolate muna kayo. Antayin nyo muna yung 10
mag-self-quarantine,
na
oo.
10 days na protocol. Tapos, sige, pwede na po ulit. Subukan na ulit. No?
Walang symptoms.
Correct,
Oo,
correct.
hindi lang sa
Tama, Robin.
naninigurado, pero-
Ulitin natin yan, ha?
Oo.
Ulitin natin. Sa lahat ng mga nandun na exposed doon sa mass gathering event, I suggest, tama si Robbie, we will have to self-quarantine. No? Self-quarantine kayo, obserbahan nyo. And itong Delta, 3 days lang may symptoms na. And ang symptoms nito, iba. Hindi siya symptoms ng anosmia, yung nawawalang pang-amoy at panlasa. The symptoms are headache, stuffy nose, parang sipon lang, at fever. Yung tatlo lang ang pinaka-common na symptoms nito. That's why napapagkamalan siyang ordinary colds. Akala ng karamihan na kabataan, sipon lang. So they continue to move around because they can smell and they can taste.
So
But
Doc,
actually, it's already the Delta variant.
Linawin lang natin yun, because we're taking advantage of this opportunity na yun na nga, panawagan na po to. Baka sa nagtatanong kayo, paano ko malalaman kung na-expose ako? What Dr. Herbosa is saying is, kung nandun kayo, yun na, i-assume nyo na na-expose kayo. Di ba? So, huwag na
Correct,
kayo magantay na basta kung
And
nandun kayo sa
monitor.
kaguluhan sa Las Piñas at Manila, i-assume nyo and then isolate muna. But Doc, I wanted to get to the other side of what you've been stressing, yung vaccination. Na
Yes.
habang nangangamba tayo dito, ang pag-asa talaga ay nasa vaccination. But the problem has always been in supply. What does it look like over the next 2 weeks, and can we make the most of this lockdown to make the most of whatever we have and what we're expecting by way of vaccine supply?
Well, as you know, we actually just did a celebration 2 days ago. We had 10 million Filipinos fully vaccinated. So that's quite that's a milestone. Whereas before they were criticizing the National Task Force that it would take years before we even finish. So we've done 10 million fully vaccinated. Another 11 or 12 million have their first dose too and awaiting their second dose. So this will be fast. We're vaccinating at a rate of 600 to 700,000 injections per day nationwide. And if we do that, in NCR, we're injecting at something like 400,000 per day. So they're trying to target 500,000. See, Chairman Ben Hor Abalos is saying, let's try to target 500,000 jabs per day in all the different cities and municipalities of NCR. That way, that is the only thing different that we're doing. So it looks like we're doing the same thing, the lockdown, but actually we're not. We're adding the better hope, which is vaccination. And this has been seen in the other countries that, yes, the Delta variant rages with them, but their ICU admission and their case fatality rate are low. Walang masyadong namamatay. So that's the good news there. The bad news is that people will get infected even if they had 1 or 2 doses.
Ano nga, marami ng breakthrough di ba? Too many.
Yes, and when we say breakthrough, you've got your 2 doses or 1 dose, but what you will experience will be mild, parang ubusipon lang. And that's a good thing because I don't have to bring you to the hospital. Mild can be taken care of in our TTMF, temporary treatment and monitoring facilities, and hotel quarantine facilities. That means we don't have to burden the hospital. It's the unvaccinated, and in PGH was talking to the doctors, parang 9 out of 10 of the people in the ICU, in the COVID ICU, were unvaccinated. So that's how real the effect of the vaccination is, and that's why we're targeting to really increase people to be vaccinated, and we're focusing on the priority, the elderly. Yun nga kanina when we were discussing this this mayhem in Las Piñas and Manila, these are the same people that will bring home to a house. And in our house, we always have senior citizens. That's the typical Filipino household. Meron diyang matanda, may lolo dyan, may lola dyan, may tito dyan, may tita. So I'm sure yan ang problema. Hindi na bali sila. Kasi baka malalakas naman ang katawan nila, nakapila sila doon. Pero yung inuwi nila doon sa person na baka yun pa yung ma-hospital at mamatay.
Doc, may isa pang problema. Yung mga tinatamaan daw increasingly are children. Hindi naman sa vaccination program.
Wait, I think that's a misquote. What the spokesperson of PGH was saying was, at PGH, all the ICUs for children were already full. But that doesn't relate to that because PGH is a referral center. So dalahan talaga siya nung pinaka-serious na mga bata. So because it's a referral center, we are not a microcosm of the rest of the health system. So baka skewed yung data namin kasi we get the sickest. So baka yun lang. So I think that was clarified by the spokesperson ng PGH, Dr. Jonas Del Rosario. Although in other countries, they did say that the children are getting infected, but that's because the children are the unvaccinated, right? So the children are the one that they just started vaccinating. So the people who are vaccinated, the adults, get mild infection. So in our case, there's a clamor to vaccinate already the children. However, as Robbie said, it's a matter of supply. Our ordered vaccines are for 18 years old and above. So once we do that, we will deny other adults. So the best effort for us is really to finish the 70 million adults that we targeted, vaccinate all of them, and then we procure again next year in 2022 probably, and then start doing the 12 years old to 16 years old.
Doc, is there any chance that the ECQ would be extended beyond August 20? I asked that kasi, well, the numbers really are of concern. Tapos yung ICU occupancy rate sa Metro Manila, ang laki ng tinaas eh. I read in the Inquirer, 12 out of 22 major hospitals in Metro Manila, kung hindi full, 7 of them are full already, critical na, nasa 90% na yung ICU occupancies eh. And that's only day
right.
one.
It's only day one, and that's what Dr. Velasco of the hospital command was telling me. She's had a very, very busy day trying to arrange for new cases that need the admissions and looking for their hospital beds. So it's going to get worse. After 2 weeks, these people in the ICU and in the critically ill, severe cases will not have recovered yet. So you'll have an increasing number of new cases, yet your recoveries aren't catching up. So you'll have a situation that we had in mid-April, when you had what we call access block. So the new cases can't be admitted to the hospitals. They'll be in tents in the ER, waiting to be admitted or waiting for someone to die or get discharged or get better before they can get an ICU bed. So that's the scenario that I'm looking at. If the government doesn't extend it, maybe the health system and the doctors will ask for a timeout because that's what happened last year. Remember, in July, August last year, they were already opening up and the doctor said, wait, timeout first, another 2 weeks, and the president granted
a year
them.
ago,
a year ago. So I think those are just like dress rehearsals for a more infectious variant. So it's basically the same story that might happen as we proceed with this, as this evolves.
So Doc, did I get you right na kung hindi mag-extend from the 2-week original time period, the doctors might ask for a timeout?
Well, of course, that's speculation. My hope,
we're asking your answer, your educated guess, kasi given all the elements on the table.
Okay, my educated guess is we'll be able to do the vaccinations, we'll ramp up vaccinations, and our ICUs will not be as filled up as last April. That's my hope. That's the desire with the National Task Force and the Vaccine Operations Center to vaccinate together with the mayors, vaccinate up to 50% to really contain this and prevent people from getting hospitalized.
Sir, desari yun eh. Hindi yun educated guess eh. Magkaiba yun eh. Akala nyo ah.
Well, we have other groups that do modeling. I'm not a modeler or
Okay,
I don't
sir.
do projections or I don't do fortune telling. That's not
Okay,
part
sir.
of what I got a license for.
Okay. Dr. Ted Herbosa, maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, sir. Ingat po.
Stay safe, everybody.
Okay, rin
And,
po.
yung mga hindi pa nagpapabakuna, magpabakuna na kayo. Thank you very much.
Ulitin lang po natin yung panawagan na if you were there in Las Piñas or Manila, yung sa kaguluhan na yon, ang advice ni Dr. Ted Herbosa, you assume you were exposed and you self-isolate muna. Follow the protocols para safety tayong lahat. Okay, that was Dr. Ted Herbosa, ulit Special Advisor to the National Task Force against COVID-19. That will be all for this special edition of the Chiefs, but we hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to everyone, mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Ed Lingao and we are One News.